Thank you, Liz. That was beautiful. Good morning, and welcome to the Sunday morning service of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of San Miguel de Allende. My name is Gary Belkin. I'm a member of the Sunday Service Committee as well as on the Fellowship's Board of Directors, and I also serve as treasurer. I will be your service leader today. We are located on the lands of the Chichimeca, Otomi, and Nahuatl peoples and are making community by Zoom across Mexico, Canada, and the United States. Welcome all of you joining us today, wherever you are. Whatever your religious background or lack of one, and whoever you love, you can bring your whole self here. Now, if we have any visitors here today, would you please stand so that we can see who you are and personally greet you at coffee hour after the service? Wow, we've got, welcome everybody. We've got about 15 or 20 visitors today. That's terrific. Welcome all of you to San Miguel and our service. A few announcements. I would like to remind you that the debut screening of the film about Abba House will take place this coming Friday, January 27th at the Biblioteca, but it is sold out. The film by UU member Judy Jackson is called Where Can We Live in Peace? Her film captures the human moments and spirits and miracles of migrants lucky enough to find the sanctuary of Abba House. Given the interest, there is going to be a second screening on Thursday, February 2nd at the Teatro Santa Ana at the Biblioteca. Tickets are available for the second showing at the Teatro Santa Ana box office and on their website, teatrosantaana.org. But I have to tell you that the tickets are going fast, and if you're interested in acquiring a ticket, I urge you to do so today, or meet Judy Jackson, who's here today, and if you speak to her, congratulations, Judy. And if you speak to her and you're interested in a ticket and might not be able to get over to the box office or do it online, she may be able to take your reservation and bring a ticket for you. Thank you, Judy, and congratulations. The proceeds of the screenings and the Blue Plate special that we will have here at our service on February 1st will benefit the Abba House. So this is a great cause and a great film. After the service, those on Zoom are invited to stay connected and visit with others and to discuss today's topic. Those who are with us at the Aldea can join us for coffee and cookies downstairs. We record our Sunday services, and we expect to post today's service on YouTube by Wednesday of the coming week. Our YouTube channel is a great resource. Just go to youtube.com and type in UUFSMA to access the great wealth of recordings we've collected there. Putting on my treasurer's hat for a moment, I would like to remind you that due to some banking changes, the methods for receiving donations has changed a bit. We can now accept payments via cash, check, or PayPal, but we cannot currently accept electronic payments through Zelle. Please check our website for more detailed information, including the address for those of you who wish to mail a check or deliver a check to our La Conexión office. Finally, please check the order of service of our website, UUFSMA.org, to see the various events sponsored by the fellowship and information on how to become a member. Our speaker today is Reverend Louise Green, no stranger to our fellowship. She is the Minister of Congregational Care at All Souls Unitarian in Washington, D.C. She is also a spiritual director, children's book author, and teacher of yoga and meditation. Her several decades of work as a community organizer in New York City and the D.C. metro area informs her ministry. She will speak to us today about how we can feel, experience, and grow by conversing more openly about death. Louise, would you like to offer your opening words while I light the chalice, please?
Thanks so much, Gary, and hello, everybody. It's great to be back, 5th time in San Miguel. And I'm waving to those online as well. I'm glad you're with us. We gather today as a collective people and a congregation called in by many desires to be with each other, to mourn in each other's presence, to celebrate the lives and beings that move us to love. Come to this space to seek a presence, a time of comfort, perhaps even to find a measure of that peace which passes all understanding. We light our chalice today in memory of all those whose deaths we remember. We proclaim the sacred spark of worth and dignity in every soul. And may we hold loss and celebration together, that all the burdens and opportunities of life might be held with some ease among us. May we hold mourning in love, even as we are held. Blessed be. Our hymn this morning is going to be Gather the Spirit, number 347. And I was asked if I was a song leader, and I said, not exactly. However, someone has walked in who said, put me to work, and I'm taking him at his word. This is Reverend Scott Michael, who is visiting today and leads music, so yay. Please rise in body or spirit as you are able.
Looking at the speed. of this hour, the glorious of one, appear all the same. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in empathy now and then, gather in hope, compassion, and strength, gather to celebrate once again. Gather the spirit of heart and mind, seeds for the sowing are laid in store, nurtured in love and conscience refined, with body and spirit united once more. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then, gather in hope, compassion, and strength, gather to celebrate once again. Gather the spirit growing in awe, drawn by the moon and fed by the sun, winter to spring and summer to fall, the chorus of life resounding as one. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then, gather in hope, compassion, and faith, gather to celebrate once again.
Please remain standing if you... I tried. Please remain standing if you are willing, as we all join together in reciting this fellowship's covenant, first in English, and then with Diana Amaya leading us in Spanish. We respect the interdependent web of life and work for a just and peaceful world. We encourage the search for truth and meaning, strive for compassion in our relationships, and seek values that will benefit our lives and the lives of others. This is our covenant.
Respetamos todos los estilos de vida dentro de su red interdependiente y trabajamos por un mundo justo y pacífico. Alentamos la búsqueda de la verdad y la comprensión total. Nos esforzamos por mantener compasión en nuestras relaciones y buscamos valores que beneficien nuestras vidas y las vidas de los demás. Este es nuestro convenio.
The reading this morning is from an interesting and provocative book called Die Wise, a manifesto for sanity and soul. It's by Stephen Jenkinson. I'll say more about him in a little bit. Dying wise is a life's work. Dying wise is the rhythm, the story around which human life must swirl. Dying wise is an act of love. It carries an abiding faith in life. It carries love for the world, and it asks that same faith and love of those who attend to it when it comes. Dying wise is spiritual activism. It doesn't require you to change your religion or get a religion or free yourself from one. Dying well is a portion of what your religion owes the world as part of earning its keep, and what you owe your religion as part of earning yours. Dying wise is a subversive Trojan horse kind of thing. Dying well will nail you to the wheel of the world because it binds you to your people, your ancestry, and to those who will come after you. Dying well loves life.
We now enter into a special time in our service where we acknowledge some of the heartfelt joys, sorrows, and concerns expressed by our members. If you would like something expressed in an upcoming service, you can do so by emailing our minister, Tom Rosiello. Those of you on Zoom today can type a message into the chat box. I'd now like to invite our fellowship member, Bill Dalsimer, to the podium to read the sentiments which were sent in this week. Bill?
Thank you, Gary, and good morning. This is a time for building the beloved community by creating a circle of love, when members and friends share with our community significant joys, sorrows, and concerns. Gary will light a candle for each joy, sorrow, and concern, knowing that each may be heard and held by all of us this morning. May the candles we light illuminate our joys. May the candles we light bring warmth and compassion for our sorrows and concerns. Now, we light the first candle to send healing and supportive thoughts and prayers to Joseph Plummer, who is starting a course of intensive therapy and exercise for a herniated disc. We light a candle of gratitude for our member Ann Kuffner, who has stepped up to take over Joseph's attention duties. He writes the weekly, rightly post in the Atención while he recovers. Bless you and thank you, Ann. We light a candle of joy for Stan Allen's recovery. Stan is back among us. He is the supporter of Abba House and has created an astonishingly successful GoFundMe page, and it's reported that he is well enough to even play tennis. We light a candle of joy and hope for Bob Culp and Christy McGew. Bob is reported to be in remission, and Christy and Bob are hoping to be back in San Miguel in mid-February and to avoid the cold and dark of the northern winters. So a candle of joy and hope for Bob and Christy. Now, are there any in the chat box that we should, from our Zoom audience? I have my computer here. We don't have any?
No, I've got one, and that is a candle of sorrow for all the people who suffered in the shooting this last night outside of Los Angeles in an Asian American community.
You know, that's interesting. You know, somebody asked me this morning whether we can return to joys and concerns where people come up and light a candle, and I think the Sunday Service Committee will have to review some of the protocols, because I know there is an interest in that. No.
Do you need to repeat his statement for the people?
For the people on Zoom, I don't know whether you heard Jürgen Aller's concern expressed for the victims of a shooting that happened this morning or last night. Where?
Last night in Los Angeles.
In Los Angeles, California. That's part of the United States. Don't be surprised that there's another shooting, but we do express our deep concern for their well-being and to the families for any losses that there were. Well, as we have done each week now for over a year, we light a blue and yellow candle of concern for the people of Ukraine, who have been suffering under an unprovoked and unjust war of aggression and genocide. May this candle help light the way for all those involved in this devastating conflict to find common ground on which to build and not destroy, and to find a pathway to love and not to hate. Our final candle is lit for all those joys, sorrows, and concerns that were not expressed today, but that we hold within and unspoken. Now, let us enter a brief time of curative silence when we hold these joys and concerns for all in our hearts.
Good morning. My name is Robin Loving, and I'm a proud member of our fellowship. I am because we are so focused on taking care of one another and taking care of the larger community. Most of us find ourselves because we sought a tribe of folks who are like-minded, who want to make a palpable difference in the lives of others. Truman Capote said, "Let your actions demonstrate your wisdom." And we are a community of very wise action. Archimedes said, "Give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum in which to place it, and I shall move the world." Well, together, we are a very long lever. Put 220 live souls together, and we're a very long lever, the fulcrum of which is our beloved community. And together, we've created a movement over the last 35 years of our existence of care for one another and our Mexican hosts. I thank you for being this noble and generous community, and I invite you to share your love today as the baskets are passed in our sanctuary and again online with Zoom. Thereby, our spiritual fires will kindle the flame of compassion, hope, and love. As Bill said earlier, we are in the middle of changing banks. Because of that, we still accept cash, we accept checks, and we encourage you to go to PayPal. But because of that, we no longer have a Zelle option. Please see UUFSMA.org for specifics about where to mail or take your checks. Your offerings for our beloved community will now be received with greatest gratitude. I thank you.
It's not surprising that as a minister, I'm often in conversation about death, about dying well and living well, and how hard it is to do either. And I want to acknowledge up front that today's sermon is about a particular kind of death for those of us who have the privilege of moving towards it with some sort of plan, or who may be wrestling with it because of a medical situation or challenge. And it's completely different from those sorts of deaths that come for the people in Ukraine in warfare, or the people outside Los Angeles who lost their lives last night. And so it is a kind of intention and attention for those of us whose basic safety day to day is mostly assured. And when death is in the daily equation of living, I think everything can feel different. There is a vivid quality of clear attention. It's like a wake-up call has come in that when either you or someone you love is in a life-threatening situation. Or when you mourn and grieve a loss, this can be profoundly moving, even inspiring, in the very midst of sadness that comes with it. When death is covered over, or denied, or avoided, much more suffering occurs. And that's the point here. Let's talk about death so we can feel, experience, and grow in the ways that we need to embrace it as part of our cycle of life. Let's find ways we can have some kind of collective experience with death if learning about dying wise is an act of love, as Stephen Jenkinson said in the reading. To die wise carries an abiding faith in life, love for the world, and ask that same faith and love of those who attend to it when it comes. In the last few years, the COVID pandemic has killed over 6.6 million people globally, over 1 million in the United States, 332,000 in Mexico, 50,000 in Canada. And this enormous number is at a level that's difficult to grasp and feel. We so often experience death's greatest impact one by one in the lives and stories of our family, friends, neighbors, or even strangers whose deaths somehow impact us at the heart level. In this lived experience of being with COVID and facing death personally, some of us have experienced a wake-up call. And many of you also have a parent or friend or spouse, an extended family member that you have lost in the same time period. These deaths were made more complicated, I think the grief more complex because of the pandemic. There was the sadness about the death itself, and then these extra layers that came on, often the inability to be with the loved ones or to gather, the postponement in many cases of live services, the emergence of Zoom memorials, and then that isolating impact when gathering can feel more risky and interactions are often masked. So death has been with us in the loss of congregational members, both here and where I serve in Washington, D.C. So many gone who were known well to our congregations. And for some of us, every name was familiar. Each person represents decades of a kind of legacy of family, work, friends, congregational history. In 2022, I was involved with 16 memorials, leading many of them, attending others in person or online, and then talking to family and friends in each case about death. And the last one was for my own mother in December. She had been in a state of decline since having COVID in November 2021. And my sisters and I said goodbye to her in El Paso in November and had the memorial in December. So it's fresh for me at the moment. Death has stayed in the forefront, which is both grief and a kind of opportunity. The Irish poet John O'Donoghue writes, "When someone you love has died, it takes a long time to learn the art of inhabiting the loss." This phrase caught my eye because an art is not something that you develop once. You actually have to enter a practice to inhabit it. And we've been in this season of death and continue to lament the ongoing losses. So how do we hold a kind of multi-layered experience together, both individually and collectively? How might we be present at deeper levels to all that is unfolding, to learn this art of inhabiting loss? I've been reading this book, Die Wise, by Stephen Jenkinson. It's a compelling, a prophetic book on facing death with love and clarity. If you decide to read it, let me warn you, it will probably disturb and upset you in some way. He doesn't mince words. Jenkinson went to divinity and social work schools and then worked over 20 years with dying people. And he now teaches and writes and has a virtual and in-person school in Canada called Orphan Wisdom. His profound lament is how our numbing and complicated medical systems, and sometimes the limits of palliative care systems, just block our direct experience of death at times. And so the book is full of a kind of sharp grief and lyrical writing, abundant possibilities, and plenty of provocation. Jenkinson speaks with this strong conviction about the death phobia, he says, of the dominant culture, so often death-denying and artificially perpetual. I experience this more in the United States than I do here in Mexico, where it seems like death is brought forward and with us in completely different ways. But many of us just go about avoiding mortality, even when the medical facts are stark and the prognosis is poor, even when decline is clearly happening, all the way to hospice care. There can be this postponement of talking about death. We struggle to know when to be present to this reality and have authentic conversations about our mortality, because the truth is we are all dying every day. And some of us just realize this sooner rather than later with either close call encounters or terminal diagnoses. There was a vivid moment in my mom's decline in hospice before she was really sedated, but was on breath support. She hadn't spoken for a couple of days, and one morning she sat up and said, "This is taking too long. I'm exiting. I'm getting up." And she tried to just walk right out of her body, but that was not a good idea for her at that moment. And it took a few more days, but she had this feeling, I'm out of here. And sometimes it's hard to push through that with all the things that hold us. There's a UUA website called Braver, Wiser, where the October theme was death. And in this one column, Reverend Karen Johnson asked, how do we embrace the fact of our mortality? Not as an obstacle to finishing business or as a source of fear that sours our life, but as an ever-present companion, giving our living days a deeper sense of meaning with depth and poignancy. Engaging that question over and over is the meaningful work of being alive. And so I'm suggesting that encountering and embracing death is part of the work of living. It's part of what takes us deeper into the joy that we inhabit now. Karen has this ongoing writing and programs you might want to check out at her website. Her work is called Date with Death Club. And so she's at datewithdeathclub.com. One story of embracing mortality really changed my trajectory and stays with me. And Alaya was a woman in her 40s. She was in hospice in Virginia with progressing ovarian cancer. She was a Pakistani immigrant whose father and 2 brothers were very patriarchal people who expected male authority. But Alaya had lived independently for many years, and at this time of medical crisis, her family was again involved. They had strong opinions and a sincere desire to help, but they were not listening to her. Even though Alaya was in hospice care, her brothers, that included a doctor and engineer, were pushing for a 4th surgery and a different medical evaluation. And her father, who was a military general, was urging her to keep fighting, never surrender, never give up to cancer. All 3 were trying to edge out Alaya's best friend, her former husband, whom she had already designated as her healthcare proxy. It was a messy family situation, which is so often the case, and sometimes you're called into this for unexpected action. I went to visit Alaya, and she made this urgent request of me. Take my father and brothers into the other room and tell them the truth. I am dying, and I want to die, and I'm ready. I've been through 3 surgeries, harsh chemo, and I am done. Tell them to let me die in peace. I was just planning on sitting near the bed and offering comfort. So I took this deep breath, and I found my courage, and I invited her family into the lounge and sat down with her father and her 3 brothers. They were observant Muslims, perhaps not entirely enthusiastic about the presence of a Unitarian minister for Alaya. And as gently as I could, I relayed what she had said. I had been present with her throughout the illness, and I was listening now, and I knew she wanted to conclude medical treatment and just let go into death. I asked them, would you be willing to support Alaya in her final wishes? Could you step back from how you might do this and let her guide her own course? If you don't, I worry that she and your whole family will suffer more. They looked at me somewhat stunned. We sat in some tense silence for a while. And finally, her father said, with tears in his eyes, I hear you. I hear you. Thank you for bringing Alaya's message, and we will honor her request. And as usual, the hospice situation kept changing. Alaya spent several days completely sedated with more breath and pain support. And then, similar to my mother, she experienced one of those sudden, clear times that can occur right before death. She opened her eyes and suddenly asked her brother to bring her a mango lassi from her favorite Indian restaurant. This is a drink with yogurt and mango. And this from someone who hadn't eaten in a few days. So that warm and astonishing family time at bedtime, at the bedside rather, while she enjoyed that drink, was the last time she was fully conscious. She got exactly what she wanted. She died soon afterwards, after a year of constant treatment. At the end, she got dying well with family and friends nearby in hospice comfort care. She got the memorial service that she wanted at her Unitarian congregation, as well as a funeral at a local mosque organized by her father and brothers. And she was able to die wise, in this case, speaking her truth about where she was and what she needed. To their credit, her family listened and heard and stayed true to her wishes. Talking about death often leads to conversations about what happens after dying. And having been in a lot of family situations where the person gave no clue, I urge you to talk about it now with your family so they understand what you want and what your values are. And of course, there are so many answers possible. As Unitarian Universalists, we celebrate each life as full of original blessing. And at All Souls, we dedicate children with this declaration. We say that everyone is born full of gifts and beauty with the spark of the divine or highest human potential. And so my own experience is that each person is then released into that very same blessing at death. Come from original blessing, return to blessing. And I experienced that myself as being held in a kind of loving matrix that we could name Source or God, Mother Earth, or simply the elements of life. We return where we came from, literally, star matter and minerals, energy, sound, light, however you imagine and experience it. We go home in whatever ways you frame and understand that journey. And Stephen Jenkinson said, dying wise is a life's work. Dying wise is a life's work. Dying wise is the rhythm, the story around which human life must swirl. Dying well binds you to your people, to your ancestry, and to those who will come after you. Dying well loves life. And so may this work be clear and direct and loving for each of you and your beloveds. May you find good company in your grief and inspiration to go on living well. It may be so. Amen.
Thank you, Louise, for that wonderful and interesting and thoughtful guidance that you've given us. Now let's join our voices together to sing our closing hymn, number 6 in your hymnal, Just as Long as I Have Breath. I invite you to stand as you are willing and able. After the postlude, please remember to join us downstairs for cookies and coffee. And for those of you on Zoom, please stay online for conversation and discussion about today's topic. Louise, would you like to offer the closing words while I extinguish the chalice?
I close with the words we've been using at All Souls lately, ones that Reverend Belkin has brought to our community. At the end of all the words, there's really just one thing. Go in peace, practice love. May it be so. Practice love.